Well, you know what's so cool is that I was able to actually, with Cardano, create awareness for a lot of people that I enjoyed and was inspired by, like Voltaire, for example, or in Basho, and people like Gauguin and Shelley. These weren't random selections where I was just going through like a catalog. Oh, that picture looks fun. Each and every one of them had some connection. Girolamo Cardano himself was this amazing Renaissance man, because I was sitting there thinking in Japan at the time, what do we name a cryptocurrency? And I said, well, it can be both good and both bad, but it also requires brilliance and it does a little bit of everything. And Cardano was just, I'm surprised there's not like a Leonardo DiCaprio, movie with Scorsese directing about the life of Cardano, because he really was a Renaissance man in every sense. He could paint. He was really good with the sword. He was a doctor. He was a brilliant mathematician. He was a bit of a scoundrel. He kept getting kicked out of cities for gambling. He wrote math textbooks, but he stole some stuff for it. He was the personal physician of the Pope, but was excommunicated, but still talked to the Pope after being excommunicated. I mean, it's just like, wow, this guy's all over the damn place. It's one of the most interesting lives you could ever look at. So I thought a cryptocurrency, that'd be pretty cool. But I said, well, it's too much masculine energy. You need to balance it out. So, how do we have a female? And then Ada Lovelace was just such a cool person, and she lived in a time where women were in the room, but there's the old saying, you're supposed to be seen, but you're not allowed to speak. So see, don't speak. And that yet she spoke, and she spoke in ways that most people didn't, and she expressed herself in ways that carried ripples throughout the years. She was a huge advocate of Charles Babbage and understood that computers were probably going to change the entire world. And this was in the 19th century. Just think about that. It's so rare to have that kind of perspective in Europe at that time period, and was a huge advocate for these things. And I even have some artifacts from Babbage and Lovelace. I collect them. So those are examples of people that inspire me. A lot of Enlightenment thinking as well. I also really liked Bertrand Russell. He had this amazing life as well, because he did something most academics have a really hard time with. He admitted he was wrong and then went and found some other thing to go work on that was completely different. And he ended up being actually more meaningful in that thing than the first thing that he did. So he was part of this group of mathematicians that were trying to rigorously unite logic and set theory and math and arithmetic together in a way where everything became mechanistic. So he wrote this book called The Principles of Mathematics. I think it was Alfred North Whitehead. And it was 1,000 pages to conclude that 1 + 1 = 2. But what they had done in the book is they built this corpus of stuff that very elegantly linked logic and set theory and arithmetic together, so that they said, okay, now everything can be expressed as a logical formula. And then what we can do is just turn the crank from the axioms, and we can write algorithms, not computer algorithms, but paper algorithms that will basically allow you to reduce everything mechanistically to something and definitively be able to say yes or no. Well, it turned out with the work of Turing and Kurt Gödel and others that math is not complete and math is not deterministic with its formulation, and it never can be with the formulation that we have. So a lot of people, they like David Hilbert and Whitehead, and it was just devastating to them, this. And they really didn't do much more after that failed agenda. Russell said, all right, well, I'm just going to go do analytic philosophy and become this titan in the field. And he had 7 decades after that where he just wrote so much and thought so much, and he was such a brilliant guy, and lived a very colorful life. So I was deeply inspired by that, and also the precision of thinking. There's a lesson in life that you have to be careful with what you say. Definitions matter. Logic matters. And the analytic philosophers have mastered that skill better than I think anyone else, and even more so than lawyers who trade in ambiguity. This is their thing. So I was deeply inspired by that. I was also deeply inspired by the classics. There's just some amazing people there. Seneca is an example of that. Cicero is another example of that. And just some of the things they were able to do in those ages. Memorizing a 3-hour speech with Memory Palace. I mean, just imagine that. You write the whole thing down, you memorize the whole thing, you go and deliver it word for word. No one today does that, but they did that. It was a common practice in the Roman Senate. Understanding human nature and the balance of power. There was a reason why there wasn't just one consul, but two consuls of Rome. And the dictator system was temporary. And being able to resiliently hold that for centuries was a pretty incredible thing. And then showing the rare circumstances when people can short circuit the system, like the first triumvirate. And just imagining like the lifestyle of Pompey and Caesar and Crassus, and how they were able to kind of build this alliance, and how delicate it was. And when Crassus died, it was inevitable that there was going to be a conflict between the two. There's great stories there. And, who knows who the people really were. As the ages grow on, we lose sight of the actual person, and people basically become stories. It's like
That's why it's his
Dr.
story.
Ford. Yeah, history, right. It's like Dr. Ford in Westworld, where he said Chopin, Beethoven, and Mozart, they never died. They simply became music. Well, similarly, all these people, they never truly die. They've just become myth. And there's value in the story. And if you remember the story, it's something you can carry with you to avoid mistakes, and also to emulate in some cases and improve upon.